Three, two, one. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Sal Cosentino. I'm your trainer and cloud architect. And from In Production by INC2. Again, yesterday we spoke about our part one. We spoke about DDoS and we spoke about what a DOS and a DDoS is. We also talked about the three DDoS attacks, explain what a DDoS and a DOS is, its main differences. And again, this was yesterday. You need to understand what this means, DDoS and DOS, because this will stem to what when we talk about um, a content delivery network and what a content delivery network is. Uh, so we hear a lot of people talking um, back and forth uh, with different ways and different methods and different um, technologies that have been out in our world, um, and we don't really have a grasp or a handle of what they mean and what they do and how these various components for cloud and security architecture help protect against the typical attack or typical DDoS, the distributed denial of service protection from an attack. We need to know how to protect it, and by protecting it, yeah, we think about the different on premises tiers or three-tier approach or different application architecture or different methods of architecture in a three-tier approach and in the cloud and on premises, and we sort of like to we sort of don't um talk about its common practice and what this common practice is. We look at different aspects of DDoS attacks, but we don't really know what they mean, right? We just dang dang dang. There's always that one aspect of, hey, like, what does this do for us? Like, how can this how can this work together with CDN? And what is CDN, right? So I know yesterday we talked about the three different types of attacks, the application, the volumetric, and you'll see this a lot, right? And I spoke a little bit about what those are, and I talked about what DDoS and DOS is in a chart, and I gave you the example of request per second and active slave and victim. So the five differences is, again, well, just to recap, we talked about the volume of traffic, the execution, the source, which is your trace source, where you're sort of tracking the true origin, we call it, we say it, the true origin of its, but it's tracking that is more difficult, right, in the DDoS attack rather than a DOS attack, right? It's not as difficult with one machine or one single source that overloads the target machine, where it makes with the traffic, where therefore making it unavailable, right? Whereas again, DDoS overwhelms the system and its capacity, right, of that service, so of that web application server, right? So, um, in today's class, I want to talk about in our conversation. Well, this is our conversation, our lecture session today. We'll discuss the following. We'll discuss what a content delivery is. It's a very critical component for your environment, right? So think of it as two things um, in this common aspect. We look at our DDoS attacks, one, and then two, it offers what it offers and why it offers the DDoS protection services, right? So when we look at that, we look at what a DDoS attack is and how CDN helps with DDoS attacks. We talked a little bit about in the last class. We talked about what overwhelming the capacity of a server is. If a lot of requests are coming for the same thing from certain environments, then the CDN will answer, which sort of means that it will have that cache content. And again, the CDNs themselves reduce the load, right? So from whatever environment or certain environment, the CDN will answer. So it will reduce the load on the servers dramatically, right? So we know that that's what's going to happen, which means it will have cache content, right? Which then themselves reduce it. And if there was an increase of load on the server, the CDN, which is our content delivery networks, usually caches some of that information that we can use and help to reduce the load on those servers, which we can then enable those servers to scale better, especially when we're attacked by DDoS attack, right? So it's not really the main reason why CDNs protect. There's other ways, but again, it's one of the ways uh, that it's there to protect it, right? So just make sure that you understand that. The question is how effective again are these content delivery networks at blocking DDoS, right? There are different companies, and as you've seen, I think if I'm not mistaken, Cloudflare blocked, I don't know, 2,500 DDoS attacks per hour on their systems, which accumulate up to millions and millions and millions. And I think if I pull up, let me see if I can pull up something here. Let me see if I can get something information for you. Um, don't have it. Where did I put it? Okay. So let's see what I think it was 2,500 or 5,000 DDoS attacks per minute. And this changes over time, right? So in the past it was less than, right? And again, the more these DDoS attacks occur, the more it's gonna find, the more Cloudflare is gonna block them, right? And they use their own service, but they're one of the best, right? There's also AWS too, right? And AWS and Azure, and these are some topics I want to touch base upon too, right? So Cloudflare blocks uh, DDoS. I think it's 2,500 attacks per hour, right? If I'm not mistaken. Um, so there is a trend here. Yeah, see, almost 5,000. It depends on the report, and I think the report we're going to look at is this was Q4, and Q4 was 2024 of last year, and they said that it blocked a total, and this is radar.clear.com, and I'm going to give you this, right? Um, and here's an autonomy of the DLS attack alone, and they're a great company, so they're one of the best, right? Like again, AWS is huge, Azure is huge. They all have its own service. They all provide its own examples, and like AWS provides AWS Shield. I'll show you what AWS Shield is a little later on. Actually, here it is. I think I provided the notes, or what I'm gonna do is provide the um, the link for you to have, and I'll put that in our chat. I have it here. Uh, put it here. Let's just put it here instead. Here, how about this? Let's just put it in here. Right? And AWS Shield. AWS Shield. Right? So, and that's Amazon, aws.amazon.com, right? So, again, they're especially when we're attacked by DDoS attackers, attackers, leveraging auto scaling and IAM systems. And again, right? So AWS is a great company. And then there's Azure, which is also a service. It's a DDoS protection, right? And we talk about the different plans, and that's sort of our second option. But obviously, they offer that protection. Um, with DDoS, Azure, we talk about the different tier comparisons and the different price comparisons, right? When we look at the different two types of tiers, right? We look at our DDoS protection and our DDoS protection IP protection, right? So, and those come in with basic and standard tier protections, like I was talking about, right? So there's different types of features that are available in both, right? So be aware of what you're offering, or what you're offering to customers, or what you're doing in your own environment, right? So you can also, right, you can also look at videos and different videos of how the different SKUs, right? right? So different companies will have different SKUs, right? Uh, of protection. It's just knowing how to create them and how to manage them and how to work on them, right? So, um, you know, so Cloudflare offers, again, Cloudflare is one of them. I can show you guys how to use all three of them. I chose Cloudflare because Cloudflare is itself one of the best that I've seen so far. You know, I've used many others, right? There's for different DOS attacks, HTTP, DDoS, right? So back in the Q4, there was about 73% launched in Q4 of last year, as an example. And again, you can go back on these trends here. So, for example, in our Q1, to be more specific, right, we can say that we're focused on the first quarter. You're looking at over block 20.5 million DDoS attacks. So that's about 358% year over year, which increases, and then it's at 198% quarter over quarter. So QOQ increase, right, which is compared to different. So all of these attacks were blocked by their autonomous systems. I am not going to explain autonomous system because that's in the Cisco course, but autonomous systems is a great topic to speak about, but not something that I'm looking to talk about right now, but I can give you guys an understanding of what an autonomous system is and how autonomous systems work. Uh, 1 second, pull out my documentation. There's something quick for you guys to have, and I'll put that in the notes. Second, autonomous. All right. So we can talk about, enterprise autonomous systems. We could talk about configuration of autonomous systems, right? You could talk about the EBG, external EBG, and how three connections in an IBG, three connections in internal BGP to be fully meshed, right? You have to understand when there's three connections in that IBGP, the internal, right? They choose something called a private autonomous system number, and what that is um, in BGP you assign it a number. So what they'll do is you'll take, for example, you have 9 routers total in one of your diagrams, and they all talk to each other from an availability perspective, right? So if the connection from the ASN, and again, that an autonomous system number is just a number that's given. There's documentation on that. So in one section, there's three. In three sections, there's three different systems or three different routers, and inside your internal BGP, they all speak to each other internally and externally, right? So in a connection, there's an ASN, and again, each section is given a number, and that could be a 6-digit number, it could be a number that's given out. And again, if one of those autonomous systems go down, then all three of them go down. Unless there's a connection that goes, and again, remember, external BGP is fully transitive. I didn't really want to talk about the configuration, but again, there's different ways and different route reflectors that we can use and whatnot, in these specific instances, right? So they all have to be part of the same company. And when they talk about autonomous defenses, we talk about that, right? And a lot of the times you'll see BGP, right? So we can visit the learning centers, we can visit the Cloudflare radar, right, in the report, and visit by quarter, right? So these are the specific quarters, and every year it gets better and better and better, right? So just remember, when we look at our most significant increase, right? They blocked about 16.8 million network layer defense, the distributed denial of service attacks, and that's about 398%, which is, like we said already, when we talk about QOQ is quarter over quarter, right? So, and then a year to year, which was our Y to Y, right? Or year over year increase, right? So when we look at the stocks from our second quarter of last year till now, you'll see that the reports shows that, you know, the real-time fingerprints that are generated by systems, right? So there is a significant increase from over 6.9 to about 20.5 million, right? So it's a big jump, right? In that sense from quarter. So there were a lot of there were a lot of bombardments that were happening. I call them the barbarne, right? So there are different types of, again, like I stated, um, the volumetric DDoS attacks, like I spoke about. The different types, like your application layer attacks, and this will go through everything, right? And these exceed about 1.2 terabytes per second, or 1 bps PPS per second, right? And these guys can block over thousands per second, right? And this will show us some flood attacks that happen that last about 45 seconds, right? And who attacked you and who didn't attack you. So again, this is all application layer DDoS attacks, and these are all distributed by top attack vendors, right? So these are some great reports to take a look at if you do purchase, and you can take a look at it that way. Um, so Azure does also have their DDoS protection. They have a free trial, um, free or pay as you go, right? Approach, and that's totally up to you. Again, this is all has to do with the licensing. So I'm going to sign out of the license, and I'm going to see if I can pull up another license for you. One of my licenses here. I'm going to sign in my subscription. Give me 1 second. Just want to pop that up just to kind of show you what that kind of looks like before I create one. And just kind of mock create one with you, just to kind of give you some visibility on it. Remember, if you're an architect or engineers that are looking, or system admins, yeah, you will create it. Our developers can create automated stuff. We can automate this stuff. Okay. I think I created one a while back on this one, so I'm going to log in and give my okay. So again, I'm signed in. Um, .com. Let me see if I can just sign in now. Yes, yes. So I will be signing in with MFA. Missed that question there. Just gonna grab my device and I'm going to log in with my MFA. Okay. So so I'm logging into that. And again, when we look at Azure, we look at DDoS, right? Protection, right? And there's different plans for that. Right? And we can create different resource groups and plans, right, based on that, so we can help defend DDoS directly with the resources. And this is how I would create the DDoS plan on Azure, right? Um, you know, and Shield as well. I can show you Shield. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I'm just going to make this a quick video. But Shield is similar. I also have a Shield, an AWS account that we can try this a little later on um, in the future. So again, you can try Azure IaaS for free, 30 days. You can pay as you go, or try it Azure for free at any time. I will post a link here for you guys, right? The different links that you guys will use, right? And so that we can leverage the CDN. Right? And remember, it offers that service. We're offering that service. We're offering Azure DDoS protection. Um, so again, here's the different types, right? So with a free account, you just got to set up an account with your Outlook account or Hotmail account if you have one. I also have videos on how to create Azure. Just look at just look at the my video blogs in this YouTube video, and I'll show you how to create Azure accounts. Uh, two different Azure accounts. One has a free Azure account, and one has a pay as you go, and how to set that up there. Again, this is all pay as you go, free for 30 days. There's no upfront commitment, and there's cancel at any time, right? So just remember, if you are using your credit card, you have to use your credit card. There may be a temporary $1 authorization placed on your card, which will be reversed upon verification. So don't worry about it. Again, keep note of it. Watch the videos. Make sure that you cancel your subscriptions if you're not using it, or disable your subscriptions or your credit cards if you're not using it. Okay. Don't keep your credit cards on there. Okay. All right. Uh, I'm hearing yeses in the background. Okay, great. So understand that aspect of it. Take advantage of the free products, right? If you can, take a look at that. Again, my Azure portal, I can create a new Azure portal. It doesn't mean that I'm going to use this. It's just I can create one for now, and I can call this, I call this in production by INC2, right? RG for DDoS, Pro, and I put today's date again, 7th May 2025. Right? It doesn't matter what I call it. And when you're creating a resource, I think if you put like stars, it won't work. Yeah, see it. So the resource group names can only include alphanumeric underscores, parentheses, hyphens, or periods, except at the end. Right? So because I put that, it won't work. Just remember that. There's no length or bytes of characters. It looks like I put about 30 or 40 words. So there's no length. But if I do decide to add, does it give me an error? Oh, where does it stop? It doesn't even stop. So you can add it. Oh, there you go. It only allows up to 90 characters. So 90 bytes in this field, which is a great, excuse me, which is something to make note of, right? When you're creating these DDoS protection plans. So I'm gonna hit OK, right? And I'm gonna give this a name, and I'm gonna call this DDoS Pro, or in production by INC2, right? And again, it looks like that must begin a name or a letter, so it looks like it doesn't like spaces. So if I don't move the spaces, yeah, there you go. So I'm just gonna call it whatever I want. Doesn't matter what I call it. I'm just gonna give it that. And just remember, we can create a single DDoS protection plan and apply it to a reason in all of my subscriptions, right? So that's, make note of that in blue here. Just remember data residency, and I talked about data residency before in other videos, and we talk about the different locations and where you're located, right? Just remember, if you're in the States, you're in the East US, right? You're sticking to your residency, right? Wherever the residency is, right? So wherever you're located, the closest one you're located. And I think there's an infrastructure map, if I'm not mistaken. Should be an infrastructure map somewhere. Azure, does Azure even have one again? I can't remember. Infrastructure map. Yeah, so there is a map that we can go through. Here it is. And this, I don't know if this is this. There we go. So here's the data centers, Microsoft Globe.Explorer. So you guys can follow along and play along with the Earth map. Um, view the different modes and legends and region filters, right? So, you can zoom into your features and take a look at the tables, right? Um, Based on the data center. Right? So just remember, when we're going to the Series 1. So if you're in the States, you're US, you have, US, um, West US 1, 2, and 3. You have, you know, South Central US, North Central US, Mexico, Korea, Italy, Japan, Germany, France, East US, right? Stick to the closest, right, in your area, and do that, right? So I'm just gonna pick one random for now. It doesn't matter. I'm gonna pick Canada East, um, and I'm gonna click next. Nothing next, so I'm just gonna click next. Get in the habit of creating tags in pairs, right? And we're gonna call this DDoS, right? For no particular, and then I'm gonna give this a value of test, right? Doesn't matter what you call it. And click on the learn more here to learn more about tags. And again, if you create tags and you change the resource settings on the other tabs, your tags will automatically be updated, so you don't have to worry about that. So we'll just hit the review and the create. For backup reasons, I usually create a template. I download the template for automation purposes, and then I'll take the template and I'll download that template, and then I'll give you all my parameters. So I don't have to rebuild it again if I don't want to, right? So I have my different string names, my types, schema, um, resources, right? So location, string, et cetera, et cetera. I need variables that I want to add. Any deployments I want to do, the parameters I want to give it. Here you go. So this is what was given to me, and this will automate the deployment of resources within our ARM templates in a single operation, right? I usually save it just in case, so I remember my settings and stuff. So I just download it, and then I'll download it in a zip file, and then I'll just open the zip file later, right? So I will go back to um, but typically you would want to create your first virtual machine and then create the DDoS attack within that. But again, it's totally up to you. I'm just showing you how to create the DDoS. There's different ways of doing it and methods. But let's go ahead and again create this plan one more time, right? Give it the name like I mentioned before. And I think I downloaded the let's just call it whatever again. I downloaded the template. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the template for that specific reason, right? And I'm going to open up the parameters, the JSON file. That would need to open it up with a specific app, which I don't have downloaded on this computer. So you would open up that with Visual Studio Code, or you would open it up with Notepad++. We could actually download Notepad++. Let's see if we could download Notepad just for now. Plus plus. You can also use Visual Code Studio. Remember, me as an architect, you guys would have to do this yourselves. I would need you guys to do this yourselves and try it on your own, um, just so that we have. I'm going to download this. Open the file. Yes, I'm just going to download that quickly, just for demo purposes. Agree, agree, agree. I'll just show the install details. Show details. There you go. So once that's done, I'm gonna now open up I'm gonna click next. I'm gonna run it, and do you want an update packages available? Yes, silently. So I'm gonna download that silently. Updater, yes. Okay, this will all be done in the back end, all right? But just to kind of give you guys a demo on that and see how that works for you. Okay. All right, so I'll go ahead and open downloads. downloads, templates. Oop. Or I'll just do this. Okay. So I'll go there. And I'm gonna open up the template file and I'm going to right click. Actually, I'm going to uh, right click, right click. I'm gonna extract all in the same location. And once I extract that, I should be able to now right click and open edit with Notepad. There you go. So again, this was the value that I gave it. Thank God I had that. This is why I save certain things just in case for demo purposes. Uh, so let's cross our I's and dot our T's on that one. Perfect. And I will open up our again, to each its own. I want you guys to learn what it is and what it looks like. You have visibility. As architects, as cloud and architects, security architects, we typically have engineers or system admins or cyber security or security team analysts that go ahead and do all this stuff, right? So it's always good to see it first, so you know what you're talking about and describing certain things to a CEO or to a C-suite level person. So um, again, um, going back to, there we go. Going back to our diagram here, we'll go back to that. And we will give it the name that we gave it. We already talked about the region, and we're going to keep it central based on our infrastructure map, right, that we saw earlier, right? And see, there you go. Yeah, there you go. So I'm going to take that link. I want you guys to keep this link, okay? That's important here. This is an important topic to talk about. Infrastructure. Make this a little bigger for you guys to see. And then we also have our overview protection. This is some links I want you guys to take a look at later on. And we'll touch base on the different tier comparisons and price comparisons in a moment. So going back to our price protection plan and how it's created. Again, we're using this to create and defend denial of service attacks at our resources, right? So So our resources are automatically receive the basic level of protection at no cost, right? So we can create a protection plan and enable standard protection for any advanced level of protection, right? So if we were to click on this link, um, this will go back to that and we'll touch base on that in a little bit. We'll talk about that, okay, in 1 second. So that'll show us some information. So that's some good links to link on. Just remember, you can create a single DDoS protection plan and then apply it to a resource in all of our subscriptions. So it depends on how many subscriptions we have. Um, we can apply those to all of them, right? Just make sure that you get in a habit of creating a tag, right? And we've already created one. And we can view by consolidating bills, applying the same tag to multiple resources. We can use that as a tag. We can use that for billing as well too. Right? Whatever you want to call it. Call it, give it the value for billing on that tag, right? I'm not going to do that. So you could do that, just get in the habit of doing that. Then I want you to click next. And again, by clicking create, you're agreeing the cost price structure. Fine. Read more. Fine. And then if you want to read more, you can read more in the different prices, right? And different um, currencies, right? And different regions that you apply it to, right? So for example, you have US, US2, US East, right? The currency, $1 is equal to 1.3. Just make sure you have that. Then again, we also, when we talk about uh, DDoS protection, we talk about uh, network protection and IP protection, right? So a single Azure ADD plan and a tenant we can use that across multiple subscriptions, right? So they'll have their monthly charges, which includes 100 public IP resources, right? And we'll talk about public versus private, right? Which is something that we need to understand. And I'll give you the different price examples, right, that they give here. And we'll talk about that in just a second. And we'll talk about the different, uh, you know, you know, data processes. And you could chat with sales if you want to, if you have any questions or questions about ingress, egress, and all this stuff, about scale outs. We're using our Kubernetes services, and stuff like that. Um, so going back to that, I'm going to create. Right. That would be for the domain that I'm using. And again, wait for that to create. Once that's created, it'll tell us here, and we can go now to the resource. And then within this resource, we can create different, settings, monitoring. We can automate different tasks, export templates. So this will give us our JSON view. We can lock that if we need to. We can move to another resource group or subscription, um, which is kind of cool, right? Now you have the visibility of it. We can add protected resources on our subscription, and we can diagnose tags. We can set up access control. Excuse me, and assign roles to that and give it the specific ownership and contributor roles. We can give it the different assignments, right, to the different people, owners, right? So I'll be the owner, the root owner. I'll be the subscription owner, right, for that specific role. Then we can view my access if I have access, right? So my access here, I'm the owner, right? Security admin, SQL DB, database contributor, and user access administrator. And this will give you a quick description on the role assignments that I'm eligible for or available currently. And then I have my eligible assignments. I can also add assignments and whatnot. Um, Give me 1 second, guys. So, we have our different plannings or reportings. We configure and manage the protection plan for organization, right? We can set different metrics, locks, properties for that. Here's the properties, right? So sort of like that JSON file that we saw, right? This is where our properties would be. And, you know, we can diagnose and solve problems here, right? In the last 72 hours. We could set up general questions if we have, if I'm under attack or NPP, right? So that's our protection plan, right? And we can do much more with that. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that later. I'm not going to show you guys, but we can delete this resource here. Pretty straightforward. So we'll just go here. Click this. There we go. And then just click on the delete button, right? And then we'll just remove. And then we'll just click delete. Oops. Let's do this again. Sorry about that. So I just select that and delete. And then it doesn't allow me to check it, so I just need to click on delete. Right. So this is just a test environment. And I'm just going to click delete. And this will go ahead and delete the whole resource group. So we're deleting the whole resource group here, right? And we can actually take a look at the cost analysis and whatnot in here, which is kind of cool. Any alerts that we want to put in and whatnot. If I go back to the home tab, this should now have been deleted, right? So this is now deleted, which is good. And then our subscription is still available. Okay, so that'll all change. Unfortunately, it is, see if it's a new service. See if we have any free. Again, this is also a solution for Sentinel. There's also that. We can create our WAFs here. Our front door policies are virtual networks. So eventually we're going to have to create those virtual networks. Remember, they're all in our data centers. We have those virtual networks obviously created for our DDoS, and we can create our virtual networks here, right, based on our specific work groups, right? But obviously, you know, this is all created. So let's go back to our resource groups. Let's make sure that we don't have anything before I stop. Okay, so go back to the resource group level now. So I deleted the DDoS protection, and then this is where I'm going to go ahead and now should be able to delete it. Click on it now. No, where's my delete? What just happened? So I deleted I deleted the resource already. There we go. So it just took a little bit of time to execute. So if I go back to the resource, it's not found. Okay, so that's good. That's good to go. So let's now, again, that's Azure. And CloudFlare is a sort of similar. Again, you need to create your own account. You just need to create, if you have one, just log in. I already have one, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to log into that. And it's already set up with that. Remember, this is one of the top rated companies out there, right? They're all good. You just got to do your research and decide whether or not you want to use it or not and what you're using it for, right? Um, you know, even AWS Shield is also very good. There's a lot of companies that have it, and this is also good to have as for high availability and failover. You need that secondary cloud service as a backup provider in case one of them fails, right? So it's always good to have that approach. So I'm going to put my password that I forgot. Sometimes it happens. Give me 1 second. in this beautiful world we live in. We don't remember everything. We do our best to, you know, memorize the things that are of importance, right? Um, Again, you as a company, your admin, your global admin will have all this set up, or just ask architects. We can demo this stuff for you, but just make sure that you understand the numbers aspect of it, right? And how this will impact or or help with the performance costs and what the costs are and stuff and whatnot, right? You also got to think about common mistakes in different architectures that you build. You have to understand that the requirements and the inputs that we're providing by the customers. So if the customers come to you with with a requirement, we need to make sure that that's done. We also need to make sure that we're not designing the elemental architecture. Um, we need to make sure that we're using proprietary services in our architectures as well too, and drawing this out. Again, I wouldn't draw this out on Paint. I'd draw this out on like a professional application. Spend a lot of time on this properly. This is just for training environments, just so that you understand what content delivery is and how it's a very critical component for your environments, right? So again, there's a lot of common things that we can look at and mistakes and different things that people can do. We need to understand that not using it against, like, why are we using CDN to protect against DDoS attacks? We should, right? And again, they reduce that load on the servers dramatically, right? So it'll over it if there's a lot of DDoS attacks, that overwhelms the capacity of the server. So again, that'll also help with that, right? So this will also help with scaling better. And these are some good points that I put in my notes here in our notes today. Um, I think I already created this already, but I guess my last video that I created uh, was I wasn't sharing my screen, so I kind of typed all this for nothing, and I was like just talking. So it happens to the best of us. And again, some of these common architectures you're hearing from me, right? Um, are common for cloud and security architectures, and this will help to protect against a typical distributed denial of service protection from any attack, right? From an attack or any attack, right? Um, I'm gonna draw a diagram out later, but kind of get the point. Um, where was I? Okay, so going back to that aspect, I'm going to now found it. Just took me a little bit of time to find out as I was talking to you. Okay. So everybody should have an account set up, even if you want to look at, like, you know, doing something, you know, or saying something is one thing, but doing something and proving that you did it is another thing. It shows me that you're out there to work. You have the dedication, you have the passion. You know, you don't do what I do, but you could do what I say, but you don't just say what I do, but you just gotta kind of do it yourself and show that you can do it. Prove yourself. You know, go out there. Um, I was never great at video editing and video, talking in front of video. But as I learned and learned, we're looking at 15 years, and sometimes, yeah, I do make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. When you're going into an interview, you got to look at that person straight in the eyes. You got to be able to discuss or back up what you're saying. Right? Remember, that person won't know what it is, or you guys won't know what that is, and you guys want to learn what that means, right? But at the end of the day, you know we're not just looking for the quick fix or the quick answer to something. You're looking for that quick answer, but you're also looking for the how that person explains it to you, and by explaining to you properly and doing these things, in a matter where you kind of understand, um, you'll see a lot. You'll see a lot of change, right? In these in what we're talking about, right? And we're not just talking and talking and talking and trying to use our record button and our back and our reverse and our back and our this. Remember, everything is just quick. This is more of a lab environment. In a professional environment, in $1 million contract, in a $10 million contract, obviously, we're going to be using the right tools for that. And I hope you guys are too, right? So, being able to explain yourself in an interview, being able to explain yourself to a group of people, sort of like what I'm doing here today, one-on-one, 5-on-1, 10-on-1, whatever the case may be. We have to understand what we're talking about and what we're delivering in our topics and in our agendas and in our projects and what we're selling, right? Or in our solutions. Um, so going back to Cloudflare, um, so I'm going to verify that. See if I can verify that again. There you go, and then sign in. If you do not have an account, please sign in. You could sign in with Google. You could sign in with Apple, or log in. Again, I guess it didn't work. Okay, so let me try this again. Oh, so here's the sign. I'm just going to show you what the sign up button looks like first. It's just a username and a password, and then you'll get the confirmation email. But in this case, we're just going to log in. So I'm going to paste and log in with the username. And verify that I'm a human, and that'll check success, and then I'll just hit login, and that should bring me in finally. Right. So here's an account that I have. I've already set up my account, a domain, could be any domain that you have. And again, these are the different selection plans that you can have, right? Just remember, make sure that you have the plans that you need it for and what you're needing it for and which plan is right for you, right? So these are the different plans, right? So that's important to know. Remember, like I said, I think it was 2,500 per second, which was amazing, in certain years or months. But those numbers are obviously based on the what we talked about, when we looked at our radar flare, right? When we were looking at the radar flare, we saw the reports for that, and our between our Q4 in December and our first quarter in 2025, our year to year and our quarter over quarter, it increased drastically from 6 million to about 20 million or so, um, from what you guys saw. So take a look at these plans, get started. Just make sure whatever you need, it's there, and what you're using it for, and your on-premises hybrid networks, your zero trust, your developer platforms. Make sure you're signing in. If you have any questions or why Cloudflare, call support, talk to sales. Here's your solutions, right? For your solution architects out there, take a look at this, read this up, right? Know why you're able to build and develop or scaled. If you're an AI architect or an AI systems engineer or something about along the lines of AI, take a look at the different by needs industries, et cetera, right? So I'm logged in. Let's say I'm here. I'm using the free for now, just as an example. I can use whatever I want. Doesn't matter. Then I can go back to our panel here, right? And I can look at our, web one detection exploits, right? And again, this will run, right? And we can create rules based on that, right? If we want, and go from there. So that's that. And then we can also do that for DDoS protection, which is now active. I think it takes about 24 hours, if I'm not mistaken. 24 hours, I think it took me. I created this yesterday. Um, so so go back to our account here, and if I scroll down to the different enterprise, but this is all based on price and what it does, right? So if you need it for this, you buy this. If you need it for that, you buy that. The different rules. You can also see the different rules that it offers and the support as well too, which is also important. So know the support. Uh, so if I go DDoS attacks, right? And I click on, let's say, network layer attacks, for example. Right? Security rules. Again, I can rule set, all these rule sets are managed by CloudFlare, right? Which mitigates the HTTP based DDoS attacks, right? So this will help, and mine is active, right? Always active. So I have these on all the time. And I can create different rules based on what I need it for. Um, some rules here that we can use. Redirects from HTTP to HTTPS. And we can create a rule. And this template works without changes. Give it wildcard patterns, etc., etc. So this is all for you to do. I'm not going to do this today. You can also work on your DNS, your A records, your DNS records, your A records, your quadruple A records, your MX records, your NS records, etc., etc. Okay. Um, all right. So again, this will also help. You can also help with suggestions if you need to. Detections are always running, so you can take a look at that to see how that works. Um, and then let's go back to, right, we can replace our name servers with our existing domain controllers, right? We would make that change. We'd have to replace whatever current name servers we have, right, and give it our API zones. So this will have to work with, this will work in tandem with your existing um, domain provider, right? So whoever your domain provider is, right? So that would work with that. So this is something that I did already, and then I'll have to delete these ones after too, right? So this is where you would go in and you would, our last step is to update our name service to activate our Cloudflare, right? So we would have to go to our registrar, all right, or whatever, and then make sure DNSSEC is off, and then we can re-enable it later through Cloudflare, right? So this is how you would actually migrate over. It's pretty easy, pretty easy, pretty cool feature, right? And again, we can check for periodically for different name servers on my domain, right? And we can check the different analytics, right? Download and print the report, which is awesome, awesome. Awesome gives me the, here's the documentation for Cloudflare, right? So I'm set. I'm ready to go. Uh, you know, I can actually go back and give this to my developers or do this myself, right? And I'll get back to that step later. So, right, well, that's the name server. So we talked about that. Okay, so AWS, same thing. Constantly, make sure that you have when you're signing in. Um, Typically, I would sign in, right? Uh, right. So I'm signing in, right? And then I would look at, here's my access, and I would look at Shield, right? So we would use Shield, right, which is our WAF and Shield. And then within here, I can create my web ACLs, right? And then look at the different prices, right? So I can get started and follow the features here. So this is pretty straightforward. I'm not going to create it. Like I said, this is all here. I can give it the closest region, um, right? And then just follow the instructions, right? And go from there, right? So that's called Shield. And if I go to the getting started, we can cost here is about $3,000 monthly a month, right? And this will give us the different features between a standard shield and an advanced shield. So in this case, I would be using my free shield, which is does not have a layer 7. Obviously, you're paying for what you get, right? And the DDoS mitigation, which is some stuff that I might need, right? So that might help me with things down the line. So also give me a benefit will also give me access to the response team or SRT for any edge cases that I might have. So here's a diagram that I kind of designed quickly here, and again, if we look at a network, on premises network, or an environment, my typical environment, we would have our uh, CDN, which sits at the edge of the network, and inside the network itself, we would have our load balancers or WAFs, um, you know, our firewalls. We can have our IDIS prevention, our web servers, our databases, um, anything that we would want to put in there. Another load balancer and a firewall, two firewalls, the next generation firewalls, right? So this could be our next generation firewalls and GFWs firewall, right? And this is sort of an example, right? Like to each its own, right? It all depends on the load that you have and what you need it for, right? And then you'll also have your ACLs and your security groups, right? And if we talk about um, a typical on-premises 3-tier application approach, we have quickly, if I can design it for you guys quickly here, you can have a data center. And within that data center, you have your private and your public networks, and then that's surrounded by a access control list. And within those public and private networks, you have your different load balancers, your servers, your web servers, and then within your private networks, you have your VLANs. So that's a typical architecture for an entry point, right? There's different architectures the further you go down, right? There's um, you know, different in the cloud as well too, not just on premises, but you're looking at on premise, but you also have something that's like that in the cloud, right? And how the cloud uses VPCs, virtual private networks, or clouds, they call it, and different availability zones and internet gateways and you know uh, point of entry or point of entry that they use, right? So it's important to note that um, point of presence. Sorry, there's a point of presence between your on premises and your cloud, right? And then whatever VPNs are used to access that, and those network access control lists and those public subnets within those lists, and then whatever gateway that you want that's in it. And again, this is all just typical 3-tier applications. We're talking about the application, obviously, right? There's a little bit difference here, but again, it all depends on your infrastructure and what you're using for the price, the point, the money, you know, selling the products, giving solutions for those products, and so forth. So again, we have our network firewalls, right? And you can have two of them, for example, right? Just an example. Doesn't have to be the same. And we're looking at load, right? And we're talking about loads, right? We're talking about load balancers, right? We need two at least, right? Right. So, and then we have our web application firewalls. If you want to use a web app firewall, WAF service, right? Which is something that we can use for DDoS. And this is an architecture that's best practice. And then we have our access control lists, our security guards, our IAMs, right? Which is um, uh, IAMs for leveraging the defense of and auto scaling. So we can use those IAMs and auto scaling for the defense of leverage auto scaling. Um, you know, these services are offered, right? And they're offered for, um, right? And they're offered for a reason, right? So, I know Azure has, I think they call, what do they call it? IP protection and network, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, yeah, network protection and IP protection, right? So these are the different tiers, right? For DDoS and DDoS network protection, DDoS IP protection. So when you're looking at a workflow, when you're configuring this, you're looking at the features that are involved in, for example, here in Azure, right? Our Azure policies here, our features, right? We have our level 3, level 4 automatic attack mitigations. Yeah, it offers that in this tier. So understand what you need it for. Do you need cost protection, WAF discounts? Are you going to use that, right? In a IP protection, it's all about per protected IP, whereas in a network protections per 100 IPs, right? So I know additional costs. What are its limitations, right? And in Plas, in virtual machines, and deployments that aren't supported, VPN gateways, virtual network gateways, protected by a policy, right? So these are things you're gonna have to work with when you're referencing these architectures. You can also click on that, right? And you know, take a look at the unsupported resources versus the supported resources, which is kind of cool to look at and read. And there's some diagrams on a specific thing that I was talking about here, where you have your protection that's enabled on a virtual network of the Azure Internet load balancer that has a public IP associated to it, right? So as you can see, our public IP between our internet and our load balancer, right? And then our load balancer is working through our balancing our information or our load or whatever load is coming to our DDoS protection network, right? And within that network is our virtual network and our subnets and then our scale sets or auto scale sets that we talk about, VMs, and then we also have our managed disks, our storage accounts, and data diagnostic logs that we're looking at, right? That's for network. And then when we look at our IP protection, a little bit different, right? I think they call it an N tier network, if I'm not mistaken, but again, I could be wrong. So if we're looking at the internet, right, your DDoS IP protection is protecting that IP, public IP, right, for those virtual machines. And and again, through the load balancer, through the virtual network, which was the protection as part of the virtual network for the network protection side, whereas the IP is protecting the IPs. Oh, and you know, they also oh there we go. They also say something about application running on a Windows N tier level. There are many ways to implement an N tier architecture. Again, you can build articles on run load balance VMs for scalability, right? And here's some different diagrams. If you want to take a look at those diagrams, this will kind of show us how um, DDoS network protection is given in this instance and not the IP, right? So you have your DevOps team uses a public IP that manages a jump box through a management subnet. And then you have your Active Directory subnet within the virtual network that's DDoS network protected. Okay, I'm not going to go too much into detail of this, but again, there's that approach. There's the DDoS IP uh, protection, right? And again, we could talk about this, right? We could talk about this forever. Again, this is just for PaaS, for platform as a service. There's a different architecture for that. If you're deciding to use that as well too, you can also use the hub and spoke method with Azure Firewall and Bastion. Here's some different hub and spoke environments, which is kind of cool. Some diagrams. I would definitely take this and study this very well. This is great documentation, great, very resilient when it comes time to knowing what this service is and how it works. Okay, and we will talk about architecture, which is what we talked about now. And I provided the link. There's the link for you to have, hold, and cherish. So remember, we talk about these cloud security architectures and these best practices. We also, like I said, we can do this in a lab environment, but in a real environment, it's serious, right? So you need to know how it works and what steps, what mitigations we could take to, what if we need to, a third party. We need somebody that knows what they're doing and has the competency and knows how to deliver these services, right? Even if you're working with a team, offer advice, another common conception, again, common architectures we look at, as in the picture that we talk about, um, right? We looked at our load. This is our load balancer. I'm just gonna call it LB for now, and this could be like VMs. This could be just hardening stuff, VMs and ASGs, right? So that could be across the board, right? And again, you can have your specific, um, you can have your ACLs, right? Whatever you want, right? Or your security groups within those and load balance between them. Um, Again, uh, we should talk about preventing, how we can use WAFs to prevent DDoS attacks. There's also ways to note that. I'm not gonna talk about that. We talk about leveraging those IM systems for defense of, which is something that we talked about. I think I talked about my last one, right? And how that works. Um, right? So, different reporting tools here for Cloudflare, and I think I spoke about Cloudflare Radar, which is traffic in Canada, radar.cloudflare.com, and this will give us the reports that we need, right? And the autonomous systems. We discussed about autonomous systems, um, right? And how there's enterprise autonomous systems. I don't want to talk too much about that because that's for your Cisco gurus that are CCNE experts or CCIE experts. Want to talk about confederation, route reflectors, et cetera, et cetera. That's another day, another topic. Um, EIGRPs and whatnot, border gateway protocols, right? And how that works and what a confederation system is and what autonomous number systems are and how they can talk to each other and blah blah blah. And if one goes down, they're all out, right? If they're fully meshed, all three are fully meshed, right? And how many connections we can get from those systems, right? So if one goes down, then they all go down. And so we must fully mesh them, right? Again, we want to look at the different threat reports for Q2505, Q1. If we click on that, would give us a number here. Again, this is from to view previous reports. We have previous report, DDoSreport.com. It's kind of cool, right? So we're looking at um, blocking 20 plus million attacks, which is about 358 year over year spike, along with 5.6 terabytes and 4.8 BPS record breaking attacks. So, which is awesome compared to what we saw in Q4. What they saw in Q4, not what we saw, but what you can look at the different trends with radar, right? And there was a power outage that affected almost about a week ago. There was one in Portugal and Spain that affected internet traffic and connectivity, right? You can read up on that if you want, and how there are significant portions, um, you know, halted retail businesses in parts of France were also reported. So there was a fault in the Spanish electricity grid that was due to extreme temperature variations, right? Of that were anonymously oscillations in very high voltage lines, so 400 kilovolts, wow, which is huge, and a phenomenon known as induced atmospheric vibration. So that actually did happen, and within Portugal, this also happened too recently. So you're looking at the different traffic reports and annotations relative to the previous periods, right? DNS queries, network levels, different autonomous systems, right, that are there based on the different volume traffic from Vodafone, from MEO Residential, from Palamela with an AS autonomous number 13156. Um, Different spikes requests for HTTP for post portal grest, Guardox. I don't know what these are, but again, these are there for that, which is awesome, man. They give you great. Again, you don't need to know that. You just need to know, you know, just design and get yourself familiar with it. As engineers, as developers, yeah, we can use that as a network architects. We can use that as know the zero trust architecture for security, know the SOC compliance records. You know, start a project, buy something, right? So as a developers, we can connect to a remote model context protocol server, right? Which is kind of cool for AI. They're working on some AI projects and agents with cohorts, right? So again, I prefer CloudFlare. It is a great program. I'm not saying you guys should all use it. Again, try this in your own environments. I'm trying all of them in my own environments, and I want you to do the same. Okay. Um, and this is all the explanations. If you need to know what this all does and what this all means, right? Um, Best practices, right? Preventing. This will give you some best practices and explain what a DDoS attack is, how I explained it, and if you want to see how they explain it, how they design, how they understand their examples of how they use it, you're totally up to you. Um, how do you prevent the traffic? Again, preventing the traffic reaching no service, right? Your request can come into your origin server in two different ways. So one way can be your application from a direct connection from the server itself, right? Or via caching, right? So in the context, so if you're looking at the reduced, these are some examples, some great examples to talk about as well too. But we have a reduced application request to origin or caching, right? So when a resource is cached, either a user's browser on the content delivery network server requests for that resource to not have to go into your origin server, right? So if you look at the user sends a request through Cloudflare. Cloudflare says, "Hey, do I have it? Cache content? Yes." Request the content back to the user. No. Goes to the origin. The origin requests the content and then back to the user, right? So these are some specific caching examples and how cache stores copies. And I'm going to copy this link. I want to copy this link and I put this in here. Caching. Very important to note. Specific attacks, how to prevent it. There's different ways. And this is how to use a web application firewall if you're using it, prevent external connections. You're more than welcome to follow these designs. These are some easy flowchart designs, right? Which are kind of cool. And, these are frequently accessed resources, images, or CSS files, right? So I'm going to go back to my drawing board here. And um, okay. And take this picture here, use this picture here as an example. It's just an example. Um, right. So remember, the attack is the attacker that's on a server or device. So when we talk about DDoS attack, The attack is an attacker that is on a server. It could be bigger, could have more um, it can have more requests than your typical um, servers that you have, right? So it'll overflood those and it'll overflow, and then that'll make your website or your resource unavailable, right? So um, make sure you understand that. So DDoS protection for Azure, again, it's free service. You can use the free service. You can protect against those resources. There are paid services, what we spoke about, right? Um, yeah, tab, tab. Okay, right. So, so, and then, uh, okay. So basic free, paid service, and I showed you that difference. There are plans that will touch upon those with the features. Again, you could do that. Um, I wanna talk about Cloudflare and setting up Cloudflare and what does CDN do so well and why it does so well, because our content delivery network looks at the incoming traffic, and if that incoming traffic doesn't look real or even just legitimate, it would hit the CDN from the hacker, and then the CDN would just drop it. So the traffic would never um, the traffic would never. I wrote this before, but it's not. It was kind of weird. Um, so I had created this video a couple days ago, but it looked like I had an issue with the video part of it. So um, I've written this during the video. So now I'm just reading it out again. So that traffic would never even make it past the load balancer. And that's why this content delivery network does so well, right? That's get into the habit of understanding what CDN is and DDoS and TOS, right? So we signed up for a free account for a free tier. There's different free tier accounts. Pro network. It all has to do with what you're looking for. So make sure you're choosing that right one. Um, when we also look at traffic, we look at the reporting. I also want to talk about the different before I end this topic. Um, what I want to talk to you about is okay, there we go. So America's Cyber Defense Agency is important. So understand that when we're doing these type of things, we're knowing what we're talking about, and we don't want to just wait for this attacks to happen. We want to be able to prepare whatever we have and our environments and make sure that our techniques are safeguarded um, for our cloud infrastructures, right? So um, do me the favor, if you are doing this, please let me know what's going on. Send me a message in WhatsApp, take some snapshots, a couple snapshots saying, hey, I tried it out, here's my account, I did it, thank you, it works. At least the way you tried it. Again, this is a test environment. Do not try this. Do not, this isn't your in production. This is just a service that you're able to test and try on your own, so that you have those visibilities, right? And again, you can follow these different governments here and take a look at the different PDFs, uh, right? Right. So I think Canada has one as well too. They're called the Canadian Center for Cybersecurity, right? And they also have one, and they have the different videos and cybersecurity videos that you should be looking at. Um, you know, we look at some videos based on the national defense, the Minister of National Defense of Canada, and India, Europe. They all have their different own Um, you know, for example, let's say um, New Zealand, right? And we look at New Zealand's DDoS um, protection government, right? See what it says, right? So they also have the National Cyber Security Center, right? So if we click on that, New Zealand, they also have their different campaigns that you can look at. So based on your location of where you are, just make sure you're looking at these specific topics, right? So if you're Canadian in Canada, if you're in the States, you're looking at the different governments and companies, right? And if you're in India as well too, India also has their own India cyber security government, right? And again, they have their policies, they have their cyber Surak shit, Bharat, this is an ecosystem, and they have their Swatch Kendra, so they have their Swatch, and I apologize if I'm saying that wrong. It's called the CSK.government, and they have their best practices as well too, right? So just make sure that you're understanding what they do and why they're there, right? Who their incident response team is, their CERT in. Um, right? So this will talk to you about best practices, right? And they'll have the different handbooks for that, which is kind of cool. And they're obviously part of the certain, and again, they have their guidelines, things to remember, different checklists that they use. And this is all government related, do's and don'ts, you know, how to set up a personal computer. Don't install pirated software. Do not plug it in, how to connect the wireless modem. So this is all important here, and this is all, setting up a wireless modem here, and these are some good tips and tricks to learn, right? So, um, we can be safe in protecting our organization against these denial of service attacks or DDoS, right? And know the approaches when we're mediating or remediating or uncovering our malicious activities, right? So know where to do and what to do and what not to do. Um, you know how to isolate those components and those incidents and ransomwares and where to go and where to talk, right? So this one here, which one was it? Here it is. This has some information, and these guys have some great information here on what DDoS attack is and what type of threat actors and what it does. And they've got the different types of attacks and whatnot. And again, I'm gonna save this for a good read, and I'll post that all for you guys so you guys have that, or just do a quick search on the internet. And here's a checklist that you can use to prepare and prevent for that, and detect and analyze, contain, and error eradicate, et cetera, developing an IT recovery plan, you know, getting that PDF and following the guidelines. So, teach its own. Everybody has his own thing. I think I'm going to end it here for now. I want to thank you all for we're reaching the hour and a half mark here. I want to thank you guys for your time. Um, I appreciate your time and patience. Again, this was just a part two finishing of what I needed. Here's some pricing again for that. Just make sure, you know, follow the prerequisites, right? Read the documentation. Thank you for your time and your patience. And please hit that like and subscribe button if you learned anything. I appreciate all comments. All comments are merited and will be answered in 24 to 48 hours. I want to thank you guys again. Have a great rest of the day and good luck. Thanks, guys. Send me your pictures. Send me your information if you did it and you want to follow along. You're serious. You want to learn more. I need 10 likes. I need 10 people. I can create classes. Um, so thanks again, guys. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye now.